Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Today we have an incredible journey to share with you. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya, and I'm so grateful that you're here listening to the podcast episode and would love for you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes and we can get this out to the wider community. Today, it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to this podcast interview. I'm thrilled to just introduce you to our guest, Darla Ridilla. Darla is a CPD and ICF certified somatic trauma-informed coach with lived experience in narcissistic abuse. Her journey from trauma to narcissistic abuse has inspired her to help others with similar experiences. During one-on-one coaching sessions, she focuses on the nervous system to work through past trauma and take back personal power. Let's welcome Darla to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome, Darla.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, Darla, tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up, and your journey to this point, and what made you go and get into coaching?
So I kind of had a dysfunctional childhood. I grew up with a father who was very abusive and then a mother who just didn't protect me from him. So I learned pretty early in life that I just needed to protect myself, that there wasn't anybody else out there for me. And, that led into in adulthood. That meant that I sought out emotionally unavailable or abusive partners. And that included a couple of narcissists, three to be exact. And so those experiences and my healing journey that began in 2013 is actually what led me into my coaching business. I do specialize with women who have experienced narcissistic abuse, but I also work with just men or women in regards to trauma as well. And I'm combining my personal experiences with my own abuse and my healing, and with a certification as a somatic trauma-informed coach.
What a journey you've had. It must take a lot of courage to work through all of the things that you've been through to get to this point where you can help others.
It has. I recently read the book by Carol Dweck called The Growth Mindset.
Yes,
And
I've
if
got
you're,
that.
yeah, yes. So basically a person with a growth mindset, as you know, is someone who doesn't feel defeated, who says, how can I get over this, around it, through it? And I think I've kind of thought that way my whole life. And so I decided that all of these experiences that in the moment felt really bad, which they were,
Mm,
that they actually served me because they pushed me to look for something different in my life.
absolutely. It's that difference between this is the way I'm born, this is the way things are happening to me, and there's no light or at the end of the tunnel, but the growth mindset says, well, hey, I can learn, I can grow, I can heal, and I can help others and have that more optimistic approach, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love Carol Dweck's work, and it's pivotal to, or it's fundamental to the Champion Mindset Collective because it's all about moving from uh, a fixed mindset to a growth mindset and then to a champion mindset, so people can really champion their lives. So can you share a pivotal moment when you realized you needed to turn your pain into purpose?
Yes, absolutely. So it it really, well, I mean, it sort of started in 2013. So I
Mm,
had started doing empowerment workshops, and those had to be set aside because of the divorce. And ironically, I'm telling other people how to empower themselves when I was in an abusive relationship, giving away my
mm,
power.
yeah.
But last year, when I got out of my last abusive relationship, I was really seeking out a local support group for narcissistic abuse specifically, and I really couldn't find it. And so I turned that frustration into action, and
Mm,
it kind of started there. I decided to start an online support group of my
mhm,
own. I started blogging about my experiences, good
mhm.
and bad. And then earlier this year, that turned into my coaching business.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good transition into it because you slowly um, transition into your coaching business while you're
Mhm.
building up a um, audience, I guess, that was already engaged in listening to it. So
Mhm.
how has your understanding of the nervous system influenced your approach to healing and coaching?
My approach has definitely radically changed. Um, I did a lot of talk therapy over the years, cognitive behavioral therapy. And what I found in my own experience is that it re-traumatized me over and over again. I was having difficulty finding a therapist at times that understood narcissistic abuse because it's kind of a
Mm,
brainwashing type of effect. And so I have kind of switched, and the nervous system, we store our trauma in our bodies. And what I've discovered is that talking about my trauma wasn't fixing it. But
no.
when I'm aware of my body sensations
Mm,
today and how that connects to a childhood experience, I can kind of go back in a snapshot of time versus rehashing all the bad stuff and
mm,
get in touch with those feelings.
yeah,
Wow, my chest feels tight, and I feel unheard. When was that? When did that
yeah,
happen when I was a child? And
yeah.
reparent myself.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza on a podcast interview a few weeks ago, and he was talking about exactly that your mind is not just in your brain. Your brain, your brain is your physical organ, but your mind actually goes right through your body, and
Hmm.
so and through the nerves and so on. So absolutely, you got to it's not just the thoughts, but it's also how you're feeling, what's happening, and becoming aware. Yeah, absolutely, having that awareness and becoming conscious about what's going on in your body, and then being able to then take the right steps. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the misconceptions about narcissistic abuse that you have encountered in your work?
I think a big misconception with narcissistic abuse is that it only happens to women who have a low self-esteem. And once they're in that relationship, they don't leave because they just don't want a better life.
Mm,
And ironically, I found that narcissists actually target people who are confident and successful.
mm,
These are traits that they don't have. And they are so delusional, they actually think like a vampire that they can suck it out of you and into themselves. Also,
yeah.
malignant narcissists often they kind of get off on knocking you down,
Mm,
devaluing you and making you be less confident and be less successful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, they come in all shapes and sizes.
Indeed, there's a spectrum for sure. They go from narcissistic traits to just while I'm not in a position to diagnose anyone, there is a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder.
So there is a way you could actually test yourself and see, hey, am I a narcissist?
Well, what's interesting is if you have to ask that question, you probably aren't,
Okay.
because a narcissist would never say that. They're like, oh, I'm never the problem. It's always somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. I've faced a few in my time, and what I've found is that the only way to really move past them is to stand up to them and tell them that you're not going to take any crap, effectively. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I've become pretty good at that. And learned to value myself more and not to people please, because I guess that's one of the things, right? You fall in love with, or you work with someone and you aspire to be like them, and then, or they aspire to be like you, or like you said, suck the energy out of you of yourself. Yeah. So how do you guide your clients to identify and learn from their setbacks?
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes because setbacks are super frustrating, and a client can feel like they're not getting anywhere.
Mm,
Um, So I kind of thought of an example. Often the best, and in most cases, unless you are co-parenting, it's best to break complete contact with them. Just go no contact. It's a really, really hard thing to do because
mm,
being and I'm speaking to like romantic relationships because that's my experience. You become addicted to this person. And so telling yourself you're not going to contact them is huge. It's like breaking an addiction. And so this
Mm,
is a common setback. And what I say to these folks, because I have done it, is that first of all, let's validate that this is a really hard thing to do. Let's validate that it's okay that you contacted them, even though you know you shouldn't have.
mm,
And I really just try to show compassion and understanding. And then I say, okay, we can't undo what happened, but let's talk about A, is there a childhood experience that's driving the compulsion, the driving the need for the validation?
mm,
Is there something in your past we can look at and heal? And then the second thing is okay, what strategy can we have? It's kind of like an alcoholic shouldn't go to a bar kind of strategy or hang out with
mm,
friends that drink for a while till they get
mhm,
over that, or maybe they never get over it. One of the strategies that was presented to me, I had an amazing friend, and I just had this compulsion to call him or text him every day, one of my exes. And she said to me, whenever you feel like calling him, you call me instead, no matter what time of day or night. And that really helped me a little
mm.
bit to have an outlet.
Yeah.
Something, there's a void here. So let's fill it with something that's
Mm,
productive.
mm, mm. What signs would someone see in a potential narcissist that they're with? And also, not only just in the other person, but what kind of behaviors would the person who the other person would be facing?
So what signs are there of a narcissist?
Mm,
Is that what you said?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, First, I want to preface that with they can be hard to detect. They're very good, particularly in the beginning, of pretending to be something they're not. But
Mm,
you usually sense there's some, in all the instances for me, there was like a twinge in my stomach that like, hey, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling like something's off. So that's the first thing. Listen to your intuition and your body.
mm,
The second thing is a lot of kind of things that they will do, is they will not respect your boundaries. They will invalidate you. They
yeah.
often fast track the relationship. I saw some kind of funny meme on Facebook a couple weeks ago that said, there's no one more in a hurry to fall in love with you than a narcissist who needs a place to live.
Yeah.
And that is so true. Um, let's see. There's some other things that you can kind of look for. You know, one of my barometers, because I'm back out in the dating world myself, is not how do I feel about this person, but how do I feel about myself when I'm with them? How do they make me feel? And
Yeah.
this has really helped me. That and not allowing the relationship to fast track.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, I'm back in the dating scene myself, and uh, yeah, you're right. It's a two-way thing. It's how do they make me feel, and it's also how am I feeling about this person and how the interaction's going. And
Hmm.
it's important to also people can say a lot of things, and
Hmm.
narcissists would be good at that, is saying who they are and what they and so on, what they can bring to the table. But
Hmm.
really, what I had to learn in the last couple of years was really not to trust so openly. Well, be trustful, but the thing is, watch out for signs. I never used to be good at seeing situations, or as people would call it, red flags. Um, and what I, what I've done is really taking the time to get to know the person and really seeing what the actions are. And, if they're genuinely, their actions are of love and kindness, then that's great. But we've got to be mindful, right?
Right. Another thing is don't divulge too much personal information too soon. Because this, if it is a narcissist, this gives them ammunition. They will actually use that information against you.
Mm,
Um, yeah, that's another way of fast tracking.
right. Cool. Could you describe a specific technique or practice that has been particularly effective in your healing journey?
Yeah, and it's probably one of the hardest techniques, but it's just to sit in my discomfort.
Mm,
We often, when we have an uncomfortable feeling, want to kind of brush that under the rug, particularly if it's really intense.
mm,
But I have found that allowing that that feeling to come up, feel that discomfort, and sometimes you feel like you're just gonna die. But
mm,
usually 10 or 15 minutes of just letting that intensity rip, maybe having a really good cry, because I'm a crier,
mm,
it does kind of lose its intensity.
mm,
After a few minutes of just sitting in it and just feeling it, it'll go away. Because we don't want to
mm.
sit in it forever, but I have found that just not fighting it, just
Yeah.
kind of surrendering to it, connecting to what's going on with me, and then after that kind of say, okay, wow, once again I'm going to go back to that inner child, and what can I say to that child that didn't have the skills I have today to get her through and let her know she's valued.
Mm, mm. True. Very true. How can individuals differentiate between healthy and unhealthy relationships? I think we've probably already covered that, right? Was part of,
Mm-hmm.
especially after experiencing narcissistic abuse. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe we've already covered that in my last question. So, did you want to add more to that?
Hmm. I guess just from my personal experiences, as maybe asking them questions about how they handle conflict,
Mm,
um, to determine kind of what their style is, whether that's going to be an issue for you. As well, I have started asking questions about personal growth, because if someone isn't willing to self-reflect and always be willing to grow personally,
mm,
there's a problem there. If they're
mm.
thinking they're perfect just the way they are and they don't need to change,
Yeah,
that's a red flag.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. What role does self-compassion play in the process of turning setbacks into opportunities?
I think self-compassion is one of the most important things when we have a setback.
Mm,
Our healing journey is not linear, particularly healing from a deep trauma or narcissistic abuse.
hmm
That's going to be with you the rest of your life. While working on yourself can lessen the triggers or lessen the effect of the triggers and the frequency of them, we have to be willing to say, I'm not going to do this perfectly. It's a roller coaster. And one of the biggest things for me is I've had to practice self-forgiveness
hmm
instead of beating myself up. You know, like when I went back together with my ex-partner and I gave him another chance, I have to say, while I shouldn't have done that, it served a purpose, because
mm,
when I did that, when I made the best decision in the moment first, but
hmm
second, when I did that, 6 months later, the pivotal moment showed up, the lightning bolt that said, holy cow, I am dealing with a narcissist, and it took me a year to figure it out. But this is why I couldn't get over him the first time. I was trauma bonded. And then
mm,
it gave me the ability to move past that. So that's one of the things. Something I just read this morning and had to jot down was I'm reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly.
hmm
And she says self-compassion means to be mindful and to stand inside of our stories, not to
mm,
stand outside of them, because
hmm
that's denial of our own vulnerabilities and our own imperfections.
Yeah, exactly. You can't judge them, right? You gotta
Right.
you gotta sit in that, and as you were saying before, sitting in your discomfort. I've been through this that process about maybe 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years, and more recently, earlier this year, where for 12 weeks I sat in my own discomfort and became comfortable with, and accepted what happened, acknowledged it, and then let it go. And that absolutely, what you just said before, makes absolute sense.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so important to not to look at yourself from the outside, but actually, be compassionate to yourself while you're going through that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So how do you help clients rebuild their sense of self-worth and with the personal power after traumatic experiences?
Yes. I'm really big about people focusing in on their successes, no matter how small.
Mm,
I have a support group that I do weekly, and these ladies are in all different places in their healing journey. And some of them are taking really big steps, and some of them are just beginning.
mm,
And it's particularly when you're dealing with someone who's in shutdown or depression, getting out of bed is a success. Making your
mm,
bed is a
mm,
success. And I've told them, if that's all you have for today, write it down, because
mm,
those add up. This is a way of really kind of seeing that you're making progress, and I think that that is so important. I think it's so important just to be aware that celebrating yourself
mm,
and doing things for yourself, I
mhm.
think are very powerful, because when you invest in you and you recognize your worth and your successes,
Yeah,
then you're going to naturally love yourself more.
yeah, totally, totally, totally agree. So, could you discuss a success story from your practice of coaching practice where someone turned their pain into positive purpose?
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go back to this support group that I run. This is where I see it every week.
Mm,
There is something, I remember when I went through a divorce class at my spiritual center in 13, and there's something about divulging really painful experiences to strangers that builds this sense of community and camaraderie. And when these women share their experiences, I'm actually blown away by some of the advice they give. I'm like, I could not have said that better. But what that does is that feedback and those supportive words are validating their experiences. It's offering that kind of Me Too environment. And I don't even think that they're even aware that they're turning this from pain into purpose. They're doing it in the moments because they're validating their own pain, and they're
mm,
validating somebody else's and helping someone.
mm.
Sometimes I just want to sit back and be like, do you want to switch and run? Because I'm learning so much from you. But it's just that safe space to share those vulnerable. And I'm always amazed when I see these women do that pain to purpose transition.
Mm,
It's beautiful.
that is, yeah, absolutely. You see the person grow and come out of these things that are holding them back and
Mhm.
more going forward towards their purpose in their lives, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the listeners who are listening today who are struggling to find meaning in their difficult experiences?
Yes, it can definitely be difficult, particularly if you're in the thick of it when you are in a difficult experience and
Mm,
you're really suffering. It can really be hard to find that meaning or even accept that there is one. The first thing I would say is just sit back and just look for maybe what is the lesson. Kind of like when I went back to my ex and then I had to end that relationship that second time. What was the lesson in that, even though that was super painful? What is it you can learn? What
mm,
positive change is possible in your life? And there may be some out there who they can't even go there. They can't even think about that. So I would say maybe the meaning hasn't revealed itself yet, and
mm.
just surrender and be in trust that it'll show itself when the time's right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Wow. It's been some really great insights in this so far. And I've got five quick fire questions that I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
Uh, and these are questions I ask everyone. So, how do you define success, and has that definition changed over time for you?
Mhm. That definition has definitely changed over time. Before I really went through all that dark night of the soul, self-reflection, I defined success by how well you kept up with the Joneses. There was status, there was the appearance of wealth, the being kind of revered in a community, but not for authenticity.
Mm,
Now that I have completely shifted my thinking over the past 11 years,
mhm,
my new definition of success is going to be finding joy in your life, in spite of your circumstances.
Yeah.
Because money and status can be taken away.
Yeah.
But if you've
Absolutely.
ever read, right, if you've ever read Viktor Frankl's book, what is it, The Meaning of Life? There's a touch on that. But it's about, to be honest, my life is not going perfect right now. There's a lot of things that are stressful and a lot of things that are not in the way that I want them to be.
Mm,
But I declared 2024 the year of my joy, that
mm,
no matter what's going on, we can always decide to be joyful.
absolutely.
Embrace it, because then that's going to bring the peace and positive change to your life.
Yeah, you've got to change your state of mind to then embrace what you want to feel, right, and what you want to
Mhm.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So who has been your greatest inspiration and why?
Oh, Jana Van Zant. I have watched and followed her for years, read her books, watched her program. She, to me, is a strong source of inspiration because she's powerful and has this no nonsense attitude. But
Mm,
she came from a tumultuous childhood that included abandonment, sexual abuse. She ended up being a young mother and was in an abusive marriage. But one day she saw a sign on a bus and it inspired her to go to college, and she became an attorney.
mm,
But that kind of changed too. She was unhappy there, and she had an opportunity to teach a class to help women transition from welfare to working, and she could relate to the women on welfare because that was her.
hmm
Is that there's that pain to purpose theme. This led to her first book. And what I love about her is she has a no nonsense attitude, but she's also got compassion. She
mm,
turns those personal experiences into a powerful way to help others. And my very favorite saying that she says quite often is, call a thing a thing. And
mm,
it's, don't brush it under the rug,
mm,
particularly with generational trauma. This pain you're feeling, whether it was because of a personal experience or maybe there was a dysfunctional parent-child relationship, we have got to get this out in the open and heal that.
yeah,
So that's what
absolutely. Yeah. Alrighty. What is something that you believe in that others might disagree in?
I feel very strongly that families do not get a pass for their bad behavior. It's been quite controversial within my own family, and I often get in the scapegoat black sheep role for this.
Hmm
But blood's not thicker than water. I do believe in holding family members just as accountable as everybody else. And when we have someone that is dysfunctional and they are really not making an effort to heal the rupture that's been caused, particularly more so when it's a pattern of behavior, not just, oh, you hurt my feelings one time, I block you. We're talking about a pattern of behavior that is creating not just drama in your life, but really deep down hurt and dysfunction, and it's interfering with your own progress. It's okay. And it's okay for you to choose to walk away for your own peace.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say to tell my younger self that I matter and
Hmm
my feelings are valid, no matter what anybody tells me, or no matter how much someone tries to devalue me and say they don't. Just hold on to that I matter.
Mm, absolutely. Last question is, what is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
My message would be, it's not what happens to us, it's what we do with it.
Mm,
We have a hand of cards, and we don't get to choose those cards. And what looks like a painful experience in the moment
hmm
might it might just be the best thing that ever happened to you in the future.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Awesome. It's been amazing, really chatting with you and getting these insights. Some things I haven't never thought of before, and I'm sure that our listeners have learned some new information. If they would like to get in touch with you, and maybe they've been inspired or they've been they're interested in learning more, how can they get hold of you?
My website is highvaluewoman.info. And you can find all of my social media links. I just launched a podcast yesterday, so that link is there as well. And my blog. If you're a woman and you're interested in my support group, that link is there too.
Great. And what we'll do is we'll put these links into the podcast description so people can click on those and visit your website and social media and so on. Well, thank you, Darla, for joining us on the Champion Mindset Collective podcast today. It's been absolute a pleasure, and it's been amazing listening to your insights and how you help people. And if you've been listening to this episode and you've been inspired, or you would like to get in touch with Darla, please click the link in the description and get in touch with her. Make sure that you share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And so we can get this out to the wider community. Champion your life and champion your greatness. Have an amazing day.